Welcome back to Oneself. My name is Stephen Maher. With me today, with me always, is Adam Bartlemen. Adam, thank you so much for joining me today, my friend.
Steven, thanks for having me.
Oh my goodness, thanks for being here, brother. We appreciate it as always, folks. What we want to talk about today is teachers, the good and the bad, right, and the lessons that both impart onto us as students, and hopefully, you know, we're all students of life. Hopefully we're all observers of life, and always, right, you're always a student in something. We always say don't trust anyone who acts like they have all the answers, or a teacher that has all the answers. That's how cults are started. That's how stuff gets a little hairy,
Yeah.
when someone acts like they know everything, in the scope of the universe and the scope of this world. We just don't, right? We don't know that much. We know a little bit about things going on around us, but on the scale of what is unknown, it's infinite compared to what we actually do know, in my humble opinion. So that's my little 2 cents on that. But then Adam, also, you shared something before too, bro, that I really appreciated. Just the lessons that we learn from the teachers that aren't good, right? Obviously, I really hope that people have experienced some really profound educators that really care and that are passionate about sharing knowledge with you, and changing the way of not how you memorize knowledge, but maybe how you think, right? Because memorization's great. It can be useful, but I think the best teachers really just make you think, make you curious, change the way how you think. The inverse of that too is, maybe the bad teachers, or the bad, the bad examples of what you don't want to be. When you see someone in life, or an educator, and maybe they're violent, maybe they're lacking love, maybe they don't care, they're apathetic, and then you see the consequences of their life and what their actions entail, and what they're living through, and you're like, oh, like, I don't want that to be my life, so I'm not going to do that, right?
Yeah.
There's merit for the student to see those examples in their life, and go the opposite direction, right? You see this oftentimes with cyclical trauma within generations. Sometimes you have one brother with the alcoholic father completely straying away from that, being sober for the rest of his life, never having an issue with alcohol, because he saw the consequences of what it did. And then maybe the other brother, or sibling or family member or whatever, you see the other person just continuing the cycle, right? And so it's like, I've seen that within families, which is
Yeah.
really interesting as well, because one sibling saw that, and they're like, they took that as a lesson of what I don't want to do. And that's admirable, but it's just interesting how some people, fall into the cycle, some people observe it and break away from it, and build their life in a different way. So yeah, but those are my opening thoughts on just teachers, man, and the things that we learn and how important they are. And I have teachers in my life, and that I'm supremely grateful for, whether it's in my fitness journey, whether it's in music, whether it's in yeah, at school, right? I know I have my opinions on the public education system, but I grew up in Massachusetts, which does have one of the better ones in the country of the United States, right? So I do have gratitude for that, but obviously some of the curriculum, I'm like, what was the point of that? It just,
Yeah.
I wish there was more useful real world things like personal finance, or any of that sort of stuff, right?
Yeah.
That actually you need, right, in life, and that they just kind of bypassed. And the running joke, I think, for my generation is, the mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell, which is just like, this thing that you were like, you learn in biology that sticks with us. But am I ever going to use that knowledge anywhere else? Not really. So that's just a little a bone to pick, or just a critique I have of the education that I was given as a child, but still very grateful for it. Still very grateful for the
Yeah.
opportunities that I was afforded. And two, man, I just want to raise up one other point. I was talking to a gentleman when I was traveling in Central America, and he was from Guatemala. He lived in the States for 10 years, and then he came back to Guatemala to build a life. And we were just talking about, like, each other's experiences, like, what I thought about Guatemala, what he thought about the States, and vice versa. And he was just like, you guys were given a gift from the get go of just how to think, right? and that gift that I was given, right, of that American education system, of the Massachusetts public school system that I was brought up in,
Yeah.
and he was like, that it gave you such a gift that, like, the people around us, and his countrymen, they didn't receive that same gift necessarily. Maybe some of them did, right? Maybe some of them were lucky enough, but how much of a privilege education is,
Mhm.
and it's just a privilege, bro. Like, it really, really is. And he's right. Like, when you're trying to teach someone skills, and you have to figure out where you meet them, where they're at, right? Meet someone where they're at, and you're like, oh, like, this person might not even know how to read and write,
Yeah.
and it's just like, okay, like, so we're starting, I'm trying to teach them,
Mm.
something about, like a business concept or something that I think would be useful. And it's like, no, no, whoa, whoa, whoa. Like, I'm putting the cart before the horse. Like, we got to get back to basics of, like, simple arithmetic, reading and writing,
Yeah.
and uh, so again, brother, like, it's just, I critique it because I care about it, but I also recognize that it's such a privilege that what I do have. Um, and then, another thing too is that we're seeing, reading rates and reading comprehension scores and all this stuff going down because it's kind of like the iPad kids and
Yeah,
the
yeah.
artificial intelligence in college or whatever. It's like it's like it's been flipped where I think they actually want students to use that. And I'm like, artificial intelligence is a tool, but it doesn't allow people to think critically, or like, it doesn't teach people how to think for themselves or to create for themselves or to build for themselves. They're just using a tool to bypass the process. And the process is the point, right? It's the
Yeah.
journey, not the destination.
Yeah.
So, yeah, brother, I know that I'm rambling a bit at this point, but those are a lot of thoughts, on this
Yeah.
teacher thing, on education, on all this stuff. And I would really love to know your thoughts on it, man. Did any of that
Yeah.
stuff stick out to you, or do you have something completely different that you
Yeah.
want to touch upon?
No, no, that's cool, and there, yeah, lots of points there. The AI thing, just quickly, is like, it's funny that we keep externalizing, thinking that we need this
More
intelligence,
technology.
yeah, this intelligent technology to help us, but it's like, really, it's all intelligence. So, like, we can cultivate that within ourselves, or we can continue externalizing it. We'll get to this point of, like, I mean, on that timeline, like, I can see that not going so great, because we have, yeah, sort of outsourced everything. But um, yeah, to the conversation of teachers, and it's interesting bringing up the point around, meeting people where they're at, because that's a really important part of teaching, is recognizing when to, lay it on thick, and when to gate it back a little bit. You have to kind of read the room, and know the audience, in order to effectively deliver a message, because teaching is not just about knowing something, or having some knowledge or some wisdom. It's about the transmission of that energy, which is the most important. Like, it can be really easy to kind of dump a lot of knowledge on people, but if you're seeing their eyes glaze over, and nothing's really landing, it's like, well, are we missing the point of this whole practice? And the conversation around teaching, it is a good place to start, where most people's minds go to, which is like, yeah, school, elementary school, high school, college, whatever first pops up in the mind, because that's generally where we go when we think of teachers, the people that taught us. And it's a great place to start and think about, who were the good teachers in your life. It's a good thing to reflect on when we're trying to build our self-concept, character, how we're becoming teachers, because ultimately we are all teachers, and everything and everyone is a teacher to us. So, yeah, for a lot of people, it starts with reflecting on those teachers we had in grade school, like which ones were the good ones, which ones were the not so good ones, with, the awareness that the good and bad is really just a value judgment that we're placing on something. But, like, in terms of, for this conversation, were they delivering us to the place that we want to go? Were we getting more knowledge from them? Were we getting useful knowledge from them? Like, so that, with respect to that, kind of using the terms good and bad. Um, because, like, yeah, I remember teachers in school that clearly didn't care. I remember teachers that that did care and were really lit up and like didn't just teach you about the subject, but kind of taught you how to be just through osmosis. Like from my experience anyway, taught me how to be a better person, a more respectful, kind, and loving being on this planet. And but yeah, further into the whole teacher thing, I think it's important really to recognize that every single moment, every single person that we encounter is a teacher for us. And so many times the ego wants to say like, no, that person's not a teacher because they were bad, or I judge their message as being misaligned with me, and therefore I want to reject it. But in truth, we have to relax and kind of zoom out and see that everything is always teaching us something. There's like a coded message in every single moment. And that, another quote that I've mentioned many times, any fool can learn from a master, but only a master can learn from a fool. And that really sums it up there. Like everyone is our teacher. Some of the best teachings we get are from the quote unquote bad teachers, the people that are showing us how to not do it. You're talking about the progeny of the alcoholic, who like one person takes the lesson and doesn't dance with that chemical, and the other one does. The other one follows that same path, um, so it's like, I mean, we could get in the conversation on karma there too, but ultimately, just bringing it back to the whole teacher thing, it's like we have the good examples all around us all the time. We have the bad examples around us all the time. I mean, sometimes the bad examples they hit harder because it's like, wow, I see what that's like. I see how people view this person and I have a more objective perspective than they do because I'm outside of them, and I can see like that does not look like fun, and I can see that these people don't respect that person, and their personal life is in a shambles. So like sometimes those bad examples are the most useful and profound, and also the good ones. And showing us a lighter, more unattached path to follow through this life. Like it's all good. For personal examples, or personal anecdotes from my life, it was like, in my old job, in the job I had before that, in school, like absolutely seeing people who were the good teachers. It took time to really settle in and recognize it, I believe, because as you mentioned, um, it's really getting to know a person and getting a good snapshot, not just a snapshot, like more of a full picture of their life and how things are going. Because uh, it's sort of like if we're seeking any sort of guidance in this life. So to use this example of like, say you're seeking a coach or a therapist or something like that. If you're looking for someone who's like, and they're sharing a beautiful message, it's like, okay, cool, this sounds good, but take a little bit more time to get to know this potential teacher of yours before investing a little bit more time, energy, money, whatever. um because it is in getting that more full, complete picture of what's going on, that we can really see if they are what we are going to consider a good teacher, or someone that is going to help us come into a deeper alignment with ourselves. Because if they're saying one thing and doing another, it's like, okay, well, clearly this person can teach me about these ideas, but they can't necessarily teach me about integrating them, because clearly they have not integrated these ideas. If they're saying these nice things, but then they're still like a violent alcoholic, or whatever, their personal life is, their karmic attachments are clearly not being dealt with in a way that is, bringing them into a deeper alignment and resonance with life itself. So, getting to see the full picture, when we are considering some sort of relationship like that, or just when we are reflecting on our teachers from the past, as we sort of reflect on the construction of our self concept. It's like, It's like, yeah, like, remember that teacher who said some nice things, but they kinda did the opposite. It was sort of a say as I sorry, it was sort of a do as I say, not as I do kinda situation. It's like, yeah, maybe I don't wanna be like that. Maybe I'll, consider that person who was, sitting back in the weeds, who didn't say as much, but was living really what I now understand to be an unaligned life and expression. But, I mean, that kinda comes back to the conversation that we were mentioning before we hopped on about like the politicians or the artists or, anyone who has a big platform who is saying one thing, or saying some nice sounding things, but then their personal life is kind of uh, reflecting something else, because ultimately those public figures in the society that we have are in large part teachers for most of us. Maybe unfortunately the situation is it's unfortunate the situation has ended up there, but I would say that is pretty much the case in a lot a lot of the time. Um, but like we were talking about that, like the art. Do we look at consider the messenger and not just the message? Like, we were mentioning that. How does that land with you though? Like, how do you feel about that? Because I know we were mentioning something about this politician you were citing.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I was just mentioning to Adam, live in Maine, have family in Maine, y'all. Obviously, the Senate race, for anyone maybe listening in the future right now is, July of 2026, and, Graham Plattner was just, accused of, some not great conduct with another, uh, woman, rape allegations, and like Adam and I said, you try to say innocent until proven guilty, but in the court of a public opinion, he suspended his campaign. Like, it's definitely taking a hit. So, yeah, not a great look. But what I was saying to Adam and what I was talking about earlier today as well with my partner was that he had a great message. Maybe he wasn't the right messenger, right? And so it's like we get so attached to the message. I mean, no, the messenger. Like people like rally behind him, and like like he's this thing, but it's like we've seen this in history before where it's like it causes such a problem because when we get attached to the messenger and then they take out the messenger, then the message kind of goes away. And we've
Yeah.
seen that unfortunately in the Civil Rights Act, JFK, MLK, Malcolm X, like, a lot of guys who had great messages and then they get taken out by, who knows, probably their own government, if you're into that sort of conspiracy theory thing. But a lot of times it's been proven. I think MLK was in part taken out by the FBI. Who knows with it when it comes to JFK? There's all sort of smoke and mirrors there, but probably some sort of involvement with those sorts of things as well. As far as I can tell, right? In my humble opinion, use your own discernment. When those guys have great messages and then they're taken out by the powers that be, and then the message dissipates, that was the intention, right? That was the intention behind it because the message was threatening to maybe the status quo. And, so when you have that happen, it's like what I'm trying to get to the point of, y'all, is that get it attached to the I mean, we try to talk about non-attachment, right? But it's like if you're going to attach to anything, attach to the message, not the messenger. And even if that messenger is somehow taken away from us, or has a scandal where it proves that they're not like a great person to be, or like the person that we would hope was guiding that message, or a person of a character that we hope was guiding that message, um it's not as much of an impact because then other people
Mhm.
can take up the message as well. And that's the thing we try to say here too, y'all. It's like, it's like hopefully you like us, hopefully you like listening to us. We appreciate that. But more than anything, don't get attached to us. Like hopefully what we say catapults you on your journey to make you think, make you curious,
Mhm.
say something, right? Does something that sparks some sort of intrigue within yourself, right? Because that's what matters is the personal growth within yourself. And you can apply that to artists, you can apply that across the board. You know what I mean? It's like, do I listen to the album of the crappy dude who did some sketchy stuff, insert whatever name you want, whatever rock star you want. There's a whole bunch who doing not cool stuff. But then it's like, but if you like the music and there's a bunch of other people who made that music, not just the one person who did bad behavior. And that's on a spectrum too of like, from all the way from like killing someone to like, being a creep. right? So it's like there's a spectrum and there's nuance in each of those situations as well. It's really tough to use that discernment. The point of all that is the message is way more important is just what I would say to that. You know what I mean? Is the message of hopefully, and if it's a good message, where Graham Plattner was saying a lot of things that I agreed with, right? But and because he has his issues, whether it's the PTSD and the alcoholism, right? Having unconsensual sex while he was blackout drunk, like that's not great, dude. You know what I mean? Like that's not a great thing to be doing. Maybe you're not the right messenger to be carrying the message of, we just want a more equitable society, right? And just have for people to have dignity, which, I agreed with a lot of his things, but it's like, kind of practice what you preach, I guess. You know what I mean? You're, trying to be a upstanding citizen. Um, yeah, brother, I'm all over the place, I think a little bit, but
Oh,
that's my main point, y'all. Again, just to wrap all that segment up is just, appreciate the message, not the messenger.
yeah. And it's important. It's like it's a little bit varied, right? It's like the example of the artist who's producing some art, and it's like, okay, so if I'm buying this person's album, I'm buying this person's artwork. Are my dollars going towards supporting a lifestyle in which they're engaging in this behavior? Is that my responsibility? Am I consenting to them behaving badly by like supporting them? Like it's a question we all have to ask ourselves, and like it's not always a yes or no. It's not always a black and white thing. Something we have to sort of consider, and it's like so. It's like you're saying like don't attach. We're not attaching to a message, attaching to the messenger. It's like maybe don't attach to any of it. Just be with it in the moment because it can change so frequently and the way and we're changing constantly, so maybe our definitions are changing for ourselves, in which case we change our definitions for the things that we're in relation to in all ways. So ultimately we're coming to this place of of being more present, I suppose, because we're very attached to the doing, right? Like the sharing of the message, the creation of the meme, whatever it is. Can we really just be with something and like absolutely put it through the filter of our discernment, put it through the filter of the mind, but ultimately allow it to fully land in the heart space and feel it and allow that to be our guide because these things yeah, we change our opinions a lot, and we can move more gracefully, we can move more directly toward our aligned path, I believe, by feeling into however it is. So it's like however that message is landing in the moment, uh, and knowing that it can change, not having any attachment to it to the point that you know that your feeling about it could change in the next moment and the next moment after that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah, it's things are constantly changing, and like you mentioned in the past, it's like our perception of what is good or what was considered good has changed over time too. It was considered okay from the American perspective to kill millions of Native Americans. Like it was considered like our godly divine right. So it's like like as an example, it's like that the morality has changed over time. Slavery was considered okay for, a long time, in different parts of the world, at different times. And, I know, and there's still a ton of slavery in today's world, right? So it's like, I understand what you're saying where things are changing. And so, to relate it back to teachers, I guess, how would you loop that back to teachers, would you say?
Yeah. So it's kind of like the AI thing. Like everything's an externalization. So any teacher is not really teaching us anything. If we look at things from the place of oneness, we are all of it. We already know all of it. We're just in a state of amnesia. We're in a state of forgetfulness. And whatever we are, quote unquote, being taught, we're really not learning. We're just remembering. So to know, and this takes faith, is to be able to sit in the space of knowing that we actually know it all. We don't have to attach to an outside teacher to show us something, because ultimately that the experience of the other being sharing with us something is an illusion. That person is sharing with us something that will trigger a remembrance in ourselves. So like that's the game we're playing. We're here, billions of people on the planet. You're interacting with someone who is we're going through the experience that that person is teaching us something, which is ultimately bringing us to the remembrance that we knew it all along and we never really needed them. But conversely, paradoxically, we do need them for the experience in that moment, for the experience of moving from forgetfulness to remembrance. So with that awareness, the trust and the faith that we do have it all within us, is where we can move from a space where we absolutely do not overlook any red flags. We absolutely check in with ourselves whenever something seems like a green flag, but whenever something is coming up that feels a little bit off, someone's sharing something and it's like 95% great, just absolute gold that this person is sharing. But then 5% was just like a little, I don't know about that. Like, first of all, don't ever hesitate to speak up and ask about it. And also, um, don't bypass it. Don't overlook it. Keep that awareness that something was a little bit off and investigate it. Feel into it, because if something's not feeling right about a teacher, and this is a really easy example to use, like if someone's seeking guidance, because this is where this kind of still happens as adults. Whether guidance with like I said, coach, therapist, whether that's in like the personal life or you're seeking a coach for a professional purpose or, whatever, athletic. It's like seeing if their stuff if what they're teaching aligns with us. It really comes down to intuition. And if it's something deeper, like a coach or a therapist, like a spiritual life coach or therapist, it's like really getting a good picture of that being, really feeling into how their energy is being shared, and if possible, learning as much as you can about them, about their personal life, like how are things going, because it's all a reflection of what's coming through. And ultimately, if that part of the mirror or the lens, I could say, is clear, it seems to be clear, then we can sort of relax and trust a little bit more what's coming through, but always bringing it back to our own intuition, always. So, I guess to quickly answer the question after giving a bit of a long-winded response there, it's like, to apply it to teachers is like always bring it back to our own intuition. Always trust ourselves, knowing that ultimately we do know it all. We're just not remembering it yet. So, um, yeah, keeping it there. If it doesn't feel right, then like don't go with it. If it doesn't feel like you should trust this person, don't trust them. Uh,
Yeah.
yeah, right. Ultimately, it always comes back to trusting ourselves anyway, and because that's really all we can do.
Yeah, man. I feel like the teachers that they shut down that curiosity, right? Where it's like, my family's experiences with, Catholic
Mm,
schools, or, it's just like, well, this doesn't make sense. Why is it? And they're just like, shut up. Or
yeah,
it's like some non-answer where it's just like, well, it's just because that's what the Bible says. And it's just like,
yeah,
okay, like, how can you look beyond that? And how can you find answers beyond that? So it's like, just as an example of, I think, what Adam's trying to say, where, um, once you start to get curious or try to go from that place of forgetfulness to remembering, and you encounter a teacher that places a roadblock in front of you, it's like, okay, like maybe that's not where I want to learn,
yeah. And it's like you can tell when someone has blocked themselves, because if they're blocking you, it's only because they've blocked themselves. They have an attachment to how something is supposed to be, which is not allowing them to expand. Because like a real teacher should teach you how to learn and remember, not just to memorize facts, for example. A real
Yep.
teacher should ignite curiosity, which aligns with what I was saying before. Is like, which a real teacher should turn you inward to the answers that you already have, because it's like when offering someone guidance, it's like you can sit there and tell somebody something, but it's like it's just noise, it's just knowledge. If you rather guide someone into a space where they will find their own answers and come to their own conclusions, then turned them inward into their own heart, where they have found their own answers. And that sort of thing lands most deeply because it has to come from inside anyway, because it is all coming from inside to begin with. The external is illusion. So if you're guiding someone into finding their own answers, that's real teaching. That's real. You're building that muscle. You're getting that ball rolling so that you're creating a supportive space in which they can find the answers themselves. It's like, it's ultimately always comes down to that person. It's like, if you teach somebody, how to add numbers, it's like, it doesn't mean anything if they're just remembering it until they understand the concept of why this makes sense and how that follows logically, that these things going together would create a sum greater, and it would be this exact number. Like, that's when you've actually taught someone something. And when someone is saying like shut up and sit down, and it's like your answer is because the Bible said it, it's like, yeah, I encountered that in my old job, where it was like, you point out something that doesn't make any sense, and you're like, why are we doing it this way? And it's like, because we've always done it this way. And it's like, okay, so
Because we've always done it this way.
yeah,
Like, and
it's
then
like,
and then everyone repeats. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. And yeah, for
Yeah.
real, like, everyone
Yeah. Yeah,
repeats.
everyone's on the same, yeah, the
Like,
whole church says it, the whole,
yeah,
firehouse says it. It's just like,
yeah.
yeah, it's just people are like, yeah,
And you're
like,
like, like, is anybody awake in here? Like, no.
yes, snap out of it, man, you know?
Yeah, and it's like, and when someone gives you an answer like that, and yeah, like the example of my old job, it was like, someone gives you an answer like that, it's like, okay, thank you. I won't be coming to you for any more guidance. Like,
Yeah, noted.
I'll be going over to this guy who's like, yeah, you know what? Actually, that doesn't make sense. Like the more positive role models in that space are like, yeah, it doesn't really actually make sense. So this is how, like, the guys who are good at this job do it. Like, let me show you. Like, this is the way the
Yeah,
book said, and then it's like, okay,
yeah,
great. And this guy is like willing to admit that some shit in there doesn't make any sense, even though everyone's got the big, like, identity built up around this being such a cool, badass thing to do. It's like, if somebody can admit, like, yeah, that's actually kind of dumb. Like, or like, hey, that is dumb. I never saw it that way, but you're right. And I don't know the answer to that. Let's go explore and find an answer together. Maybe we can come
yeah,
up with something better right now. And that's for real how it would go. And I think in every industry, that's innovation, right? It's like recognizing something could be done better, figuring it out, and then sharing it with others. And it's like, but also, an interesting thing there is, like, again, non-attachment. So it's like, okay, I figured out a better way of I don't know, like, cutting a car apart or breaking down a door. I figured out a better way. So now I'm all excited about it. Now I have an attachment to it, and I'm really proud of it, and I'm going to teach everybody else, and I'm going to tell them, like, this is how it has to be done. But then, if I have an attachment to it, and then, like, a couple of years later, and like, another guy comes along and figures out an even better way, am I going to sit there and go like, uh no, that way's bad, or like, don't listen to him, he hasn't been here as long, like, that's stupid? It's like, no, 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 we got to stay open. And this applies to literally everything. This is like, this is like human history, really. It's like recognizing when something is working better, and releasing the attachment to the old thing, because it's just like, that's the process of evolution. And that's such an important thing in teaching, because, like, we've seen that so much. Like, scientific hypotheses change, theories change, definitions change, new discoveries upset entire historical narratives. And, like, we have to be able to accept that and be like, okay, well, maybe I wrote my thesis 30 years ago on the Giza pyramids being constructed this time and in this way, and I've been teaching that, and I've been really attached to that narrative for 30 years, and that's all I've been talking about. And then a discovery comes along and, like, blows all of that out of the water. All of my professional work, all of my studying, all makes no sense, was, from one perspective, a waste of time. I believe it actually is, because it's all a part of the evolution and the karmic unfolding of the individual and the collective. But ultimately, like, we got to realize, are we just gonna stay attached to the nonsensical narrative? Are we gonna stay attached to a practice that is archaic and ineffective? Or are we gonna release our ego attachment to the identity that went along with that, and rather accept the new, more innovative, efficient, sensible solutions that are put in front of us. Because like that's, I really think, like as we're moving through life as observer, unattached and just observing, that becomes much more easy. And that's so that's what I would look for in a teacher too, is someone who's able to move uh, in a more like fluid, balanced way through life without being attached to like, these, this is how we've always done it. And that's why we do it. Because it's like,
Yeah.
that doesn't, that's like, okay, so you're saying you just want to like take this whole, this, this, this bus, this evolutionary bus and just fucking grind to a halt and say like, no, we're good here. It's not going to get any better than this. It's not going to get any better than this. Like, we're good. And it's like, because if we are taking that position that like things are good enough, like look around, like, yeah, man, good enough. Like, well, look at how we're doing things. We're still trashing the environment. We're still trashing each other. It's all the same thing. We're not doing a very good job for such intelligent beings, supposedly intelligent beings. We're not doing that great of a job. So again, being well adjusted to a profoundly sick society, like maybe I don't want to be well adjusted to that. Maybe I want to figure out maybe I want to make some adjustments to that society in order to feel some more alignment collectively and individually.
Yeah. Yeah, man. And I think, you know, another thing I would want to add to this whole discussion is, I don't think you're going to find those types of teachers in the traditional places. And just like, so it's like expand your definition of what a good teacher is and where a good teacher is, and
Yeah.
expand your definition of um yeah, like what knowledge is. It's like, knowledge just doesn't come from in a textbook or a course or college curriculum. Like, it comes from all around us, you know what I mean? And some of my best lessons and have been outside the classroom, right? Have been in the real world. I know this might sound naive, y'all, but and just again in my travels, where like my whole concept of medicine, food being a form of medicine, was just changed. I know some people around the world are probably like, yeah, no shit, dude, like duh. But like with America, where I grew up with, it was just like drugs are medicine. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? It's like you have a problem, take a drug. And so that's just the culture I was brought up in, where it's like you go to other places around the world, it's like yes, drugs can be useful, but it's also like ginger and turmeric and lemon and all this other stuff that it's like honey, right? All this other stuff where um like that's also good too. And I learned that from like just people in my travels, right? You know what I mean? And their knowledge that they've learned from mothers or grandmothers or
Mm.
past generations of just like this cultural knowledge that was passed down, and just completely expanded my worldview of what I considered medicine to be, just as a quick example. So it's like, yeah, like knowledge is everywhere, and continue to look beyond just the classroom, and you might save some money, right? Like I'm still paying off my student loans, y'all. So it's like there's a plenty of places to learn in the real world, and I think you learn better. I know for myself, right? It's like I learn better when I'm in an environment and I'm doing it, and yes, you conceptualize it, like that's great. Like the classroom is great for some stuff too, but it really sticks for me when I'm actually doing the thing or learning the language, for example. It's like I'm in the place, I'm, talking with the people. I'm not just like learning flashcards out of a textbook,
Yeah.
and so
Immersed.
immersed in knowledge, right? And so yeah, brother. Yeah, I think that's just like what else I would say when it comes to just where to find those sorts of people, where to find those sorts of teachers is just, you have to get creative in that too.
Yeah. And I think they will only come when we're opening to something coming in the external. That comes as a reflection when we're opening within ourselves.
Yeah.
When we are truly ready, when it is a feeling, it's not just an idea. Like I need to know something more because that's like attached to an outcome that is attached to an idea of how things should be, how, it's like the root of suffering. I don't have enough of something, I have too much of something else. Like I have an idea that it should be different based on a comparison that I'm making, based on an observation. But it's like that's one thing, and we can chase that as well. It's a little more arduous, but when we are truly open and ready in that moment to expand, because that's like, this is like opening to the evolutionary process more deeply. When we're truly ready, when we feel that, then like the teachers come. and it's not always a person, you know, it's like sometimes it's a situation. That's what we have to recognize. Like creation speaks in all of these ways. We're so accustomed to just absorbing something through text or hearing something spoken verbally. But truly, our teachings are coming in every single moment and are exist in every space that we're in. It's all there, always is. So I think it's like, yeah, just remaining open and understanding that the teachings, the lessons are all around us. That's and sometimes we have to recognize those more subtle layers before we get the more overt ones because um it's often it's what the mind wants is that overt, like someone wants their guru to show up, you know, it's like Yogananda's story of meeting the guru, and like, that sounds very attractive to the ego because it's like it's kind of like, in a sense, from one perspective, low effort, like, "Okay, I just have someone who's gonna show up and tell me what to do to, like, go on this path to self-realization," and it's like, well, what if, like, you know, like Ramana Maharshi said, like, self-guru and God are one, so if we recognize that the teachings are all around us at all times, then we can, you know, open to those more subtle layers that perhaps will later open to the more overt, ego satisfying ones. However, at which point, after opening to those subtle layers, most likely those other more overt surface level layers won't even be needed. Won't even be necessary at that point. Always holding that paradox.
Yeah, man. Well, folks, I think that's probably a good place to cap this episode of Oneself. If you like what you heard or, just want to help us in any way, please do any of the things that are free that support us, like, comment, subscribe, leave a review, share with a friend, any of that sort of stuff. We really appreciate it. Adam, any closing thoughts on teachers, messages, messengers, um, all that good stuff?
Yeah, just repeating, it's all around us. The teachings are all around us all the time. It's truth. We're immersed in truth. We just it's a matter of learning how to see it, remembering how to see it.
Remembering. Yeah, exactly. Alrighty, folks. We'll catch you next week. Until then, have a good one.